You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Well, you believe in transitory inflation? You know, some wise man once said that everything in life is transitory, especially life itself. So transitory, I guess, is in the eyes of the beholder. And what do you think about transitory inflation? Is it good, bad? Or is it really transitory? Why don't you tell us? Send us an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, right now, got one of my favorite guests coming back on with us for the second time, Gil Baumgarten. And Gil, you're a 36 veteran of the investment wars out there, securities investment industry, and your book called Foolish basically you published it so people could understand how they're pretty much getting screwed. But maybe the biggest way that people get screwed, and they don't even know it, most of you out there, perhaps until it's too late, is through inflation, be it transitory, permanent, or temporary. Inflation is that hidden tax on you that basically destroys your savings and diminishes your purchasing power and really lowers your standard of living if you haven't properly prepared for it.
Yep.
So what do you do about transitory inflation? And do you believe that it's just a temporary phenomena and everything will be back to normal soon?
I do. I believe inflation is here. The government has embarked on these systematic easings that have occurred back in 2008, and that never really resulted in any inflation. It's almost as though this time it's more deliberate. Many times governments create inflation because they fear deflation, because that's much harder to control. And so, yes, it does tend to create asset price bubbles. You're seeing it in the housing market while financing is still cheap and prices are rising. I don't really know what the long-term impact is going to be and whether it'll be just a flash in the pan like it was back in 2008.
Yeah, well, they've never printed money like they have recently. And not just all the stimulus program, people being hooked on the stimmies, but it's also the Federal Reserve pretty much monetizing $120 billion a month worth of debt. And, all fiat currencies exist only by dint of the confidence that you might have in them. And once you lose the confidence, then the fiat currency could become worthless. We're headed down this path.
Well, we are the world's reserve currency, and energy in the world is priced in US dollars. So it's going to be very difficult for the currency here in the US to become worthless. I do think that politicians are motivated to pay today and try to, collect tomorrow. And therein lies the problem. In past centuries, many people may not know this, but the reason why our higher value coins have etchings on the side is because it became customary back in the day to scrape off pieces of precious metal. And the reading, which is what's on the side of a quarter or 50-cent piece and the like, was to keep ne'er-do-wells from scraping off valuable minerals. And since we went to tin and copper and other representative metals, it's much less of a problem, but we've kept the reading on our coins just through tradition. And, when you can print money and issue bonds and create currency out of thin air, with just simply an adjustment of reserve requirements for banks, it's really easy for governments to scrape the edges of those coins in another way. And so I think that's what, in fact, you're saying.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. The reading on there it was all done as an as a monetary protection scheme, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah. goes back a long time. So the government's just skimming everything. But, the US dollar is the reserve currency. But when you look and you see how big the deficit is and how much money they're printing up and borrowing, when are countries really, maybe it's not so much the citizens of the US who will decide the game is over, but the rest of the world that uses the dollar as the reserve currency.
Yep. There's been speculation that the new reserve currency is going to be crypto, which I totally do not buy that argument. It's way too volatile to be actually considered a currency. It's extremely difficult to transact business in small denominations. And so it's really not convenient enough to be used in the way of a currency. And the world's governments have a financial incentive to make crypto either illegal to own or extremely difficult to own. And you're starting to see rumblings of China and the US both not being very big fans of the threat that's to their currency status by a digital currency. So
you know what they say, Gil, don't steal, the government hates competition.
That's exactly right.
And the cryptos, so there's only 9 or 10,000 of them out there because we need so many, because I guess we just do. Like there's more cryptos than there are varieties of dogs. Dogs are the biggest, as far as varieties of breeds of dog go. That's the highest breed of any animal in the world. There's hundreds of them. But, the cryptos, whole nother thing. But we look at the top 5 or 10 of them. Let's just say they have some value that you might not be aware of. Many of you might not, but let's just assume they have a value. When every country that produces currency makes money off of that and gives them control over the populace. There's talk of FedCoin, digital Chinese yuan. That's around now. Of course, the countries are going to want their particular digital token to be used by their citizens through legal tender laws, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, I think some of this is maybe part of the explanation why Bitcoin has crashed recently.
I think so too. And it's just been too volatile. I mean, there's a lot of hocus pocus in it as far as I'm concerned. We don't have any exposure to it. Would have been nice to have had it on the ride up, but at this point, I'm glad I don't have it. We do own NVIDIA, and NVIDIA makes the chips that are most likely to be used in Bitcoin mining, but they're also the most popular chip for gaming and other high potency applications. So it's a crazy world out there right now.
Yeah, well, that's like selling Levi Strauss selling picks and shovels to the gold miners.
Yeah,
and here you're just selling them graphics processors, which is whole nother story. But
that point is in my book.
Yeah,
so we talked about Levi Strauss being the only benefactor of the 1849 gold rush.
Yeah, there's a whole book that really documents the gold rush in California from start to finish that I just finished reading recently. But the ones that made the money were the real estate developers and the Levi Strausses of the world.
You bet.
Yeah. So in this case, I saw this crash was coming. I wish I had ridden it up to 65,000 because that was exactly the point where I said to sell it.
Yeah.
And people can go look at my various podcasts, said things crashing. And now supports at 30,000, 200-day moving average, and look out below when it breaks that. So as a financial expert here, and as one of the top 300 registered investment advisors in America, Gil, what the heck are you supposed to do? Real estate is through the roof, especially in your go-go markets like in Florida, Texas, Tennessee. Usually you'll find them, real estate markets are strong all over, but in the red states with no income tax, they're through the roof.
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Today's show is brought to you by Mustango River Resources. Their flagship projects are located in Kirkland Lake, an established gold camp that has historically produced over 70 million ounces of gold. The Kirkland West project is a high-grade gold project beside Kirkland Lake Gold's world-class Mikasa gold mine, one of the highest-grade mines in the world. The Umeja project is an advanced stage project with 600,000 plus ounces of gold along the Cadillac Break, 25 kilometers east of Mikasa. Their projects have the potential to transform into another world-class mining camp in the Kirkland Lake District. Make sure you go over to mistango.com. That's MISTANGO.com. Take a look and sign up for notifications. Stock is traded on the Canadian Stock Exchange, ticker symbol MIS. For more information and to sign up for notifications, go to mistango.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Yeah. So inflation typically is good for housing stocks, but it is not good for commercial real estate. Commercial real estate, as you know, is priced off of a cap rate, and the price is a derivative of the competitive interest rate in the marketplace, almost like the value of a long-term bond. When prevailing interest rates go to near zero, that's the maximum price for two reasons. One, the leverage that you would put on a commercial building is really inexpensive at low interest rates, and the comparative yield that you're going to get from the rent is high relative to its finance rate. And at some point, you reach the nadir in which those interest rates have bottomed out, and then you have the double whammy on the other side of it of high finance costs on commercial real estate projects, and the inability to charge possibly high enough rent, or even be in long-term contracts where your rent was fixed 6 or 7 years ago and it's no longer competitive in a rising interest rate environment, and you get the double whammy on commercial property values. So I think that's something people have to be careful of, especially in the commercial space.
Yeah, with the work at home thing, office rental market, who knows if and when that will ever recover. My daughter works for a major tech company. She just got permission to work at home permanently and promptly left to New York State and moved to Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
Perfect example. So the lifestyle thing and all of that is kicking in. So forget real estate. Maybe there's some upside potential on certain residential real estate, except that inflation or commodity price inflation driven up the cost to produce housing to ridiculous extremes. Price of lumber, parabolic. Price of copper, parabolic.
Yeah, but those types of spikes are generally not very sustainable. There's a house that's going up in my neighborhood that was framed maybe 90 days ago, and there has been zero progress on that house. They haven't put up the walls. They haven't put up the siding. There, you can see right through the framing. It looks to me like somebody got panicked on watching a sheet of half-inch plywood go from $7 to $41, and they threw the skids on that. So that tends to correct itself. And frankly, if I owned timberland right now, I'd be out cutting the heck out of my trees to get plywood onto the marketplace so that I could take advantage of it. When everybody else does that, you're going to have a glut of supply, and prices are going to cause people to flinch on whether they're going to purchase those $40 sheets of plywood, and it's going to come back into line relatively quickly, I think. There's also some supply issues that had to have occurred due to COVID. You had to have had Weyerhaeuser shutting down plants and other things related to COVID that would also, create a vacuum of supply at the point in time that was unprepared for the recovery in activity. So those lumps tend to get worked out over time.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be in any big hurry to go out and build a big house right now.
Yeah, well, copper. So the average house has like 250 pounds of copper. So $4 times 250 pounds, you're looking at $1,000. So if it goes to 5, it's $1,250. This is not a big deal, but the difference is that supply of copper, a copper mine takes 10 years to bring on stream.
Yeah.
I've got some companies I work with. They've got maybe tens of billions of pounds of copper in Alaska near the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
And right now they're in the middle of building a road, and And they're also getting environmental objections, which aren't going to go anywhere because this is Alaska,
Right.
state. But things tend to get tied up. But if they're lucky, 4 to 5 years they'll be producing, and the mine will, its life will outlast you and me, the rest of our lives combined. There's millions. But point is that big copper mines getting more and more difficult to find these deposits and bring them online. And then you've got this global environmental lobby. Oh, we want electric vehicles. We just don't want you to get copper to actually do it. So we got some interesting things with copper.
Well, there's a lot of wishful thinking in the green energy space anyway.
That's all.
That's just another manifestation of it. There's a guy who drives around my neighborhood in a Tesla with a custom license plate that says some truncated version of zero emission. I'm like, zero emission? You're plugging that into a socket, and that socket generated either by nuclear or natural gas or by coal. And one way or another, you're burning that coal out the tailpipe or would-be tailpipe on your Tesla, Mr. so-called green drive around town. Look at me, I'm Mr. Zero emission, BS on that.
It's typical of virtue signaling.
That's exactly right.
Leftist and without any comprehension, because the internal combustion engine throughout the decades has gotten more and more efficient. And I think it's in the low 30s. The Tesla is like 80 or 90% efficient in and of itself, except for one little matter. The grid, there's grid loss of electricity.
Yep.
And you get all these things combined. The EV is only 41% efficient compared to like 34% for gasoline-powered engines. Diesel engines are more efficient than that. So, this is just a bunch of nonsense. But in any event, so give us your one investment thesis here for the coming year that will allow you to at least maintain your wealth, if not increase it.
I would say be careful in the bond market. For a long time, the bond market was riskless compensation. And nowadays, you have return-free compensation with lots of risk. You see 10-year treasuries trading under 1%, and you get a spike in interest rates, and you can lose money in a bond faster than it will pay you its measly coupon. And oh, by the way, interest off of taxable bonds such as treasuries is taxable at the maximum rate. So every percent that you manage to eke out, you have to give 40% of it back to Uncle Sam anyway. That's a definition of a pretty bad and pretty risky investment. So we are not big fans of long-term, long-duration taxable bonds.
All right. So what's the converse? Where do you put your money?
You can buy short duration. You just have to give up the return. We buy, decent credit quality inside of about 5 years. The whole point of a bond, as far as we're concerned, is to not be a stock. We don't buy bonds to make money at it. We buy bonds to not lose money at it. And if you're already sort of struggling with the low rates of return that you're going to get in a 10 or 20-year treasury, the effective difference between that and a 5-year is almost zero, considering that you're not getting any return anyway. So
why go out?
Exactly. We don't extend duration in order to get yield. And that's what I think is going to really surprise people when they see their long-term government bond fund lose 30% of its market value like it did back in 87. And we had some other spikes in 98 and had some pretty nasty consequences in the bond market.
Hey, I couldn't agree with you more. Hey, got to run now. So just tell us where we find you on the web, how we connect with you, and can check out your work.
My work email is gil.baumgarten at segmentwm.com. Segment Wealth Management is my firm. You can also see the book and some of my artwork on my gilbaumgarten.com website. So that'd be the easiest place to go. Gil with one L. So gilbaumgarten.com.
Very cool. I didn't realize you were an artist. Well, hey, you got to do something here to keep your mind occupied and not going crazy, right?
Yeah.
Gil, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, got a question for Gil? Send it to me. I'll forward it off to him, kl@kerrylutz.com. That's the address. And sign up for a free newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Gil, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks, man. See you.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.